The Changeover is back with another episode. This week,
individuals are essentially, in some levels, racing ahead of their organizations. We see that there are huge challenges where one individual or a couple scrappy people on a team that are really interested in learning this stuff on nights and weekends are indeed racing ahead and kind of, for lack of a better phrase, unlocking actual superpowers for themselves. But duplicating that kind of adoption at an organizational level is very, very hard.
Companies with 50 million to 500 million in revenue, they're at 14 to 16% scaling rates. So in your report, you refer to it as the worst of both worlds, right? Too large for a single CEO to be like, this is what we're doing. And at the same time, too small to have really a dedicated enterprise AI team that can lead the whole organization.
Every business is either AI native, i.e. built from the ground up, a new business with AI at the core, AI emergent, which is most of us, businesses that have been around a while that are successfully moving forward with AI, or there's a big third category, which is quite simply obsolete.
Welcome back to the Changeover podcast. I'm Jo Phillip, VP of Creative and Ops at Wider Group. And today we're digging into something that's been occupying a lot of my brain and probably yours too. Your team's using AI. Some of them are probably doing amazing things with it. But as their leader, you're probably watching that happen and thinking, so now how do I turn this into something the whole team can really rely on and use consistently? So that's the shift from experimentation to real infrastructure. And my guest today has spent the last several years at the center of that question. Mike Kaput is the Chief Content Officer at Marketing AI Institute and SmarterX, co-author of Marketing Artificial Intelligence, host of the Artificial Intelligence Show, and one of the most consistently practical voices in the AI space. He was also a speaker at our Experience Inbound conference this spring, and I've been looking forward to this conversation ever since. Welcome, Mike.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So before we get into this practical stuff, give listeners a quick sense of your point of view. So what makes SmarterX's view of AI adoption different from all the noise they're already filtering out, right? All the hype stuff they're seeing on LinkedIn, for example.
Yeah, so at SmarterX, we actually spun out of a brand called Marketing AI Institute, and that business started way back in 2016 when we started looking at and analyzing AI's impact specifically on the marketing industry. And as you can imagine, plenty has changed since then. SmarterX now focuses not just on marketing, but also every business function and how AI is going to impact it. And really why we're a bit different is not only have we been around since forever at this point, far before the current wave of generative AI hype. But also from day one, we've been marketers and business people trying to figure this out, not necessarily engineers or people building AI that are trying to sell AI tools. So we've always been an independent voice trying to just unravel exactly what the impact of this technology is on businesses, on marketers, on companies as a whole. So what we try to bring to the table is kind of exactly what you mentioned in your intro, like just practical advice for people, understanding all the nuances and the messiness of what it takes to run a business, adopt technology, and actually build fulfilling businesses and careers in the face of what we consider a pretty transformative technology. And we spend a huge amount of time eating our own cooking. You know, we're an education business, an event business, a media business, but we're using AI in a multitude of ways across the business, marketing, sales, customer success, operations, et cetera, to actually try to pilot and scale AI for as many things as we can. And so we learn a lot by actually doing this stuff as well.
For me, I think the authority that brings in the advice that you can give is irreplaceable. You've got the experience behind it and probably have, hit a lot of the same roadblocks and challenges that your customers are also going to be facing. You just dropped the 2026 State of AI for Business report.
Yep.
And one finding I think really deserves maybe the biggest attention that we can give it today in this conversation. And that is that more than half of individual professionals say that they're in the integration or transformation phases of AI adoption. They've moved past experimenting But we're talking about this at an individual level, right? Only 25% of organizations say that they've reached the scaling phase. And the largest share, which is nearly half at 47%, are still in that piloting phase. So people are way ahead of companies when it comes to how we're using AI. And I can see this. I can see it happening here, inside of our own operations, where individuals are discovering amazing things they can do. But then thinking about how to take that to the broader team is a real challenge. So if we can talk a little bit about the gap, the issues that creates from a business perspective and why it matters so much, I think our audience can really benefit from that.
Yeah, for sure. So to give a little context here, we've, in one way or another, done this type of research for the past 6 years now. This year was the first where it's the state of AI for business, not the state of marketing AI, though we have asked a lot of similar questions of a broader audience. So we surveyed about 2,100 professionals across roles, functions, and industries to kind of get at this data. And yeah, to your point, this really just kind of confirms something we are living every day. And I think a lot of businesses are, which are individuals are essentially, in some levels, racing ahead of their organizations. We see that there are huge challenges where one individual or a couple scrappy people on a team that are really interested in learning this stuff on nights and weekends are indeed racing ahead and kind of, for lack of a better phrase, unlocking actual superpowers for themselves. But duplicating that kind of adoption at an organizational level is very, very hard. People approach technology in different ways. And as I'm sure everyone's heard, AI is pretty interesting but controversial technology. So there's a lot of baggage people bring to the table when it comes to AI. So yeah, we were not surprised by this stat at all, but it was nice to kind of put some actual data to this feeling we were having and that a lot of our customers were having, where it's like, your organization is almost certainly far, far behind many people individually within that organization.
I think about it in terms of, infrastructure, training, decisions around which tools are yeses and which are nos. What do you do with the really resistant people? There are so many things that leaders have to think about when they're going to be moving forward to become truly AI forward in a business.
Yeah.
But there's another piece of the same report that I want to talk about because I think it really closely describes a lot of the businesses in our audience. And that's that the data shows the smallest firms and the largest enterprises are actually the most likely to have reached scaling. Small firms at 32%, enterprises at 30%. But that middle market, it's companies with 50 million to 500 million in revenue. They're at 14 to 16% scaling rates. So in your report, you refer to it as the worst of both worlds, right? Too large for a single CEO to be like, this is what we're doing. And at the same time, too small to have really a dedicated enterprise AI team that can lead the whole organization. So that fits a lot of SMBs, right? Industrial manufacturers, distributors, professional service firms. So what's going on there and what do they need to be thinking about to get over that hump?
Yeah, it's such a troublesome state of affairs to have to be dealing with as kind of an SMB, just because, it's structural. Because on one hand, if you're a small kind of scrappy firm, you may not have all the governance and roadmaps and necessarily the full strategy in place that maybe a 1 billion plus enterprise would, but you also can just move really fast. The CEO can own everything, or at least drive top down innovation and adoption. Smaller teams can just move faster and experiment more, which you can only unlock some of the frontier capabilities if you actually sit down and use the stuff. And there's all sorts of value to be unlocked by connecting tools to different systems, data, et cetera, which I realize is sensitive and we need to proceed with caution. But if you're a smaller firm that can do that quickly, you can really capture some outsized value there. Enterprise is definitely moving in the right direction, probably at a slower rate. But to your point, they have way more resources. If they are all in on it, then they have the ability to spin up the governance, the councils, the things that facilitate wider scale enterprise transformation. Whereas, your SMBs, it's kind of a grab bag of it. Totally depends on the people you've got, the leadership you've got, the business you're in. But I would say if you are an SMB, and you are sitting here saying, well, no, we can't do AI because of data or privacy, or we don't have the budget, or we can't go as far as we want to go, I just would highly encourage you at a very fundamental level to sit back and reassess that assumption, because smaller firms are able to do it. Enterprises are doing it. Even very risk-averse ones. They're not all doing it perfectly. I can tell you horror stories from all these size firms, but they are making progress. And I don't mean to be, blunt or harsh, but you really do not have time to sit back and say, well, we're just going to see how everything shakes out. Every business is either AI native, i.e. built from the ground up, a new business with AI at the core, AI emergent, which is most of us, businesses that have been around a while that are successfully moving forward with AI, or there's a big third category, which is quite simply obsolete. So if you're an SMB, I realize it's hard, it's painful, and it's really frustrating and difficult. But you need to start moving forward. Now, even if you may not be able to do all of the AI transformation you would have hoped or that you've been promised right out of the gate, but you need to be moving the ball forward starting now, whatever that looks like for you.
That incremental progress is certainly better than, I don't know what, waiting for a giant meteor or something, right? Because there are areas, right, that are lower risk than others. And I think that, for a business that maybe is feeling sort of sluggish in getting started, a good place to look might be, where are our lowest risk areas to start trying things?
We'll have people come to us and say, well, our data's not ready for AI, or we have all these considerations, and that's valid. And those are hard challenges. But also, do you know what doesn't require permission? What doesn't require data is tomorrow you starting to learn how to, as the CEO or as the C-suite or as a leader, how to be deeply integrating AI into your strategic work, into strategy, into decision-making, into analysis, synthesis, any type of knowledge work you are doing that doesn't require you to give it all this proprietary information. You would be shocked how far you can get simply using AI as a thought partner and a creativity partner to start. That doesn't require a single thing except your time and effort and understanding of how to actually unlock value from these tools. You may not get to do all the incredible, sexy stuff everyone's talking about online. You may have real data problems or privacy problems or compliance problems to figure out that are really difficult and take way too much time to figure out, but that doesn't mean you can't be moving forward on other fronts.
Correct. I completely agree. So next thing I would really like to talk about is the whole tool stack question. Everything's getting AI embedded at this point, right? And many, many things are going to be integrated in new ways, which to me is incredibly exciting. But it also is really starting to bring forward this question of should there be a single set of tools that say the whole organization everybody should at least have access to this tool set and be using it in a specific and standardized way so that we're working together as a unit within it. And then maybe separate spaces, separate tools that are reserved for experimentation in different areas. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's a huge question and one of the most important ones. I think it's really easy to get lost in the noise around AI tools, and I understand why. It's like drinking from a fire hose, trying to keep up with wait, which model came out? Doesn't help that things are moving so fast. It's my job to keep up, and I can't keep up most of the time. So I would say you're not alone if you're feeling overwhelmed. So that's one. But two is that you don't have to boil the ocean here necessarily. So we kind of advise to keep things simple. It's going to be highly contextual, but I would say broadly, we kind of think about technology adoption and your kind of tech stack in 3 tiers. So I would start number 1 with the existing tech you already have. Even if you don't love it, whatever software you have approved, even traditional software, even stuff you've had for years, every software vendor is now baking AI into their core product or their core services and platforms. So you almost certainly have access to some type of AI in your existing technology. That technology is already approved. It's procured, especially for, again, at the SMB level, as you're getting held up with more bureaucracy or more logistics or more legal approvals, that even if existing tech is deeply flawed, you have to start there because you need to get the ball rolling. And I realize like there's a lot of dissatisfaction with some of the AI in those tools. Totally get it. But you're going to have to compromise if the alternative is doing nothing. But then outside of that, tier 2 is really what everyone's kind of raving about, right? Which is frontier models of some type. You're really broadly talking about OpenAI's ChatGPT, the models that power ChatGPT, Claude from Anthropic, Google Gemini, maybe a little bit of Grok from XAI, Meta a little bit, but really those are the big 3. I would be highly focused after you max out what you can do with your existing tech of figuring out which of those tools, if not more than one, you can get approved and widely adopted as quickly as possible, because there is a very real difference between what frontier AI is capable of and all the rest of it. So again, start with the less than stellar stuff that you don't have to jump through hoops to use, but then you really do need to spend some time, energy, and resources, whether it's the ChatGPT Enterprise license, Claude Enterprise, et cetera. At the very least, you need one of these. And I would argue pretty strongly, over time at least, I'm not saying roll it out all at once to 1,000 people or what have you. Every person in every organization that does any type of knowledge work has to have access to some type of general purpose AI platform. That is like table stakes. So you have to have one of those, I would say, over time. And then third tier is these specialized third-party AI tools. They definitely have a place too, but there's, AI marketing and sales tools, specialized tools that are very, very helpful, even though they might use the same frontier models or same AI that is offered by the labs. They're often, in the right hands, customized for more domain-specific tasks or much easier to use sometimes. So those would then be my third kind of sequential step of slotting those in over time. I would not start trying to do all of these at once. It's really difficult. If you can manage it, great, but I don't see a lot of people successfully doing that.
And I think that's a good point, right? If you think that you should be everywhere all at once, there's not going to be enough energy and focus on any one of those areas to really get traction and movement in the direction that you want to be going. So, the point about starting with the tools that you have and finding the AI in it, I find that can be a great place where you can bump up against those limits and then say, but if I were in Claude or Chat or something else, Gemini, maybe I could make the model do what I really need it to do. Whereas, this embedded AI is not behaving the way that I need it to. So I think you can have some discovery in that first tier that can help inform your experimentation as you move into that tier 2 as well.
I think that's really critical to mention, because I would also say a key point I haven't really addressed is overall AI literacy on your team. Let's say tomorrow you waved a magic wand and everything was perfect and you had unlimited budget and could buy anything and implement it tomorrow. That doesn't mean it's going to get solved. Your team, you could give your team all the tools in the world. I've seen companies spend millions on highly advanced AI tools that they then dump on their team, and their team has no idea what AI is even capable of. A lot of people are still using AI tools as just glorified search engines. And that's fine if you're doing that, but that is like barely scratching the surface of what's possible. So to your exact point, if you're not even getting value out of the existing tech you have, I don't know if you can even complain about it. Like, sure, it might not be as good, but the better tool is not going to get someone to use it in a different way unless you train them to.
Absolutely. And that's a great segue to my next question. So we've used, for example, the free skill jar courses that Anthropic has, Claude 101 and AI literacy, which I think really do help set that foundational understanding that people need to have about our responsibilities when we're using AI and some of what to expect, right? Like using it for the right things and what not to expect from it. And I think that's really helpful in setting that sort of baseline expectation so that people can start to use it from at least a similar starting point, if not the same. But I've also been going through SmarterX's Scaling AI course, which is available through the AI Academy on your website. And I'm going to put the link in the show notes so that our listeners can also check that out. But one thing that it reinforced for me is that your framework for evaluation matters as much as your tool choice, because you need to be super intentional about these choices. If we're thinking about these sales and marketing leaders, particularly in that industrial SMB kind of space, what should they be thinking about when they're evaluating their options for a tool? Let's say they've got limited resources. They're going to pick one, right? They're not going to throw the millions at it like a larger enterprise might. But what should they be thinking about, at least at a baseline, for making that decision?
We would strongly recommend, before you're even looking at a tool, what is the outcome you're desiring? What are the use cases for the tool? We actually teach a couple different models in that course and others, a use case model and a problem-based model. And I won't, get in the weeds on these, but before you even say the letters AI, you need to go through a pretty serious exercise of saying, from the bottom up at my individual job level or team level, or even across every department we've got, systematically identify what is the work that we are doing every day, how do we prioritize those and get those granular enough into narrowly focused use cases. Each of those tasks or use cases, make sure it is very narrowly focused and documented. And then you want to actually prioritize what is the actual value to applying AI to it, and our ability to do so. And we kind of teach a methodology to do this in the courses, but it's really about, at the end of the day, stack ranking the work you already do and understanding where is the actual value to applying AI. Because if you are aiming at the wrong problem, it doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter how many tools you have. It just is not going to work. This is like the basic business strategy and like tech adoption stuff that has never gone away, that's been relevant for 20 years in marketing and sales. And then we also kind of talk about this in like our problem-based model, which is kind of more of a top-down, longer-term model and methodology, where you're really identifying what are the core problems in your business, the known pain points that perhaps if you could solve them would move the business forward. We're not saying AI can or should even solve those problems until you kind of start doing your due diligence. But you want to come to any vendor, any tech selection process with those two things: your use cases and day-to-day work for existing work for AI, and your bigger picture business problems you're trying to solve. And it becomes a lot easier to start evaluating technology, because too often you have businesses that say, well, okay, we got to get on AI, right? Well, that's true, you do. But if you don't know what you're actually trying to achieve with it, it's not going to work. It's like any technology.
Well, and it's an interesting difference too, right, between the individual user, who often takes that very task approached perspective to whether or not to use it, how to use it, and then the organization at large, which has objectives and goals to reach for the year, and thinking about how those two kind of join somewhere where, you're finding those data-driven, repeatable things that AI is so great at, but how does that then dovetail into the business objectives for the near future?
As an example there, we work with one of the big healthcare enterprises we work with. You have to do both. They are both pursuing at the use case level across different teams. What are the high priority use cases? Can AI be applied? What is the value of applying it? And then they're turning teams loose on actually learning how to do that, because that's like something that teams can actually, an individual contributor or even, a manager or someone on the front lines can actually conceptualize, because this is the work they do. And at the same time, the same leaders who have put that initiative in motion are looking from the top down at wholesale organizational change and transformation, which is like, how do we put AI at the heart of our marketing function, of our sales functions, et cetera? And that's much longer term, bigger picture work, but you can't just do that and then expect all the people down here to just figure it out and be on board. It's both. They need to be using AI daily while you're figuring out what does the next 5 years of this business look like with AI at the heart of it.
Exactly. And the through line that I'm hearing there is humanity, right? the human strategies on both ends of things, both the how do we get this done day to day and where are we going with this, right? You can't just say, oh, okay, we're going to slap some AI on there and it's going to speed everything up. There's got to be a real strategy here too. And that brings me to actually my next question. In your report, when you asked people what AI topics they want training on, huge number, 58% said they want training on integrating AI into their existing workflows, what we were just talking about. It used to be prompting, right? 5 years ago, everybody needed to learn how to engineer prompts. And now we're really talking about workflow change. And prompting only came in at 15% this year. So clearly the workforce has moved past prompting and they want operational depth now. But a lot of organizations, they're still in that intro training phase, right? Really elementary stuff. How can they really start to think about closing that gap for their people?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I would say coming from our audience, it's definitely a little more AI forward than probably your average organization. I'd expect if we had a perfect sample of every level of, kind of AI adoption, prompting is still important. And I wouldn't say it's a thing we shouldn't be teaching, but yeah, it is just the first stage. So if you're trying to close the gap, good prompting still matters. Having your people understand that they shouldn't just be typing in a few words to an AI chatbot, you'd be shocked at how many people still do that. So that's a necessary first step. But beyond that, it is about this next piece people want to learn, which is integrating AI tools into your existing workflows, because it is not just about these one-off little random acts of AI of like, oh, look at it, it rewrote this email for me, or it took meeting notes. That's all really great. But we're at the point where the tools are literally, for many types of tasks, at a near human expert level. And that gives you huge opportunities to re-architect or reinvent the work you're already doing. This kind of comes back to the use case model. But the first step we always counsel is you need to start some of the basic change management of documenting your workflows and processes. Because if you don't know what you're doing and how you're doing it,
how are you going to teach AI?
Exactly. Everyone wants to learn agents. Well, I have news for you. As someone that uses agents, guess what? It takes an enormous amount of work to teach them to do what they need to do. And it's not just agent or AI specific skills. The benefit is knowing how the work is done. That's a critical next step. Take one thing you're doing every single week, and you probably are doing it by muscle memory, and that's okay. You need to challenge yourself to write down, at the very least, have AI interview you about the steps. If you pretend it's an intern, you're trying to teach how to do it. And it's not about automating away the whole thing. It's about, oh, I now understand the sequential steps here. I can now slot in different AI capabilities to pieces of the process. It's not about saying like, can ChatGPT do this? Like, that's an okay question, but these days that's kind of like asking, can a computer do this? It's not really a useful question. It's like, of course it can, but the real question is what parts of a computer can do this? So which capabilities of AI? Is it image generation? Is it reasoning models? Is it agentic research? Is it deep research? Parts of your existing work will never be done by AI, but you're going to have to quickly find out where that division of labor is, because that's exactly where we're headed. Is you are at some point going to eventually be handing off pieces of your work to AI agents that do it for you, and you will oversee, manage, and orchestrate that workflow.
One thing I find myself admittedly kind of shouting from time to time is, I need a diagram. Because really that's what, you find yourself doing, is sort of diagramming out, what does this workflow look like, and what am I doing, and what is the right tool to be doing that part of it, and how do I orchestrate that in the correct sequence and with the right data and the right information that I provide as well.
And, I would also say there really quick to the point we were talking about before of like, if you're an SMB, especially struggling to get some of this stuff approved or struggling to figure out the use cases that are like safe, this is absolutely one. This is where I would start. Fire up ChatGPT, Gemini, or Claude. Go describe to exactly what Joe just said. Say like, hey, I want to map out my workflows. Here's all the stuff I need to figure out. Here's the workflow that I want to target. You don't even have to tell it anything proprietary. Work with it as a thought partner to be like, I want to get to a final map of all the sequential steps that I do as part of this, and also how to then make it smarter with AI. That is a conversation you could have this afternoon and get some real value from, I think.
And that's one you can have in the simplest interface of all, right? In the chat interface. You don't need special skills to be able to have that conversation. So you mentioned time, right? It takes a lot of time to do this planning. I also heard you say you need to very quickly get to that point. When it comes to scaling, that the number one barrier that's reported in your report is time at 42%. And after that, fear and mistrust, and then education. But thinking about that, right? Obviously, education used to be A1, but really now it's time. What does that tell the leader about where they need to be focusing energy on making this shift actually happen in an organization?
Once people know they need to be doing more with AI, which not everyone realizes that. So that's one hurdle, I suppose. And that's maybe where the fear and mistrust comes in as a barrier. So you do have to address that first, I would say, to get even people over the hump. But even when they are, then it's like, well, okay. Then the question was, well, where do I start? And there's now tons of education out there. It can be overwhelming, so it's helpful to have kind of a guide through all that. But it is this lack of time. People are overwhelmed, and suddenly AI feels like an extra job to everyone for the most part. We're lucky that we get to talk about this and work on this intimately as part of our jobs. But if I had a job where we were trying to figure out AI, it would be like a part-time, second part, or full-time job. It sounds simple, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but starting with those really low-hanging fruit use cases, you learn by doing, so you're solving some of your education issues, and you'll feel a lot more comfortable knowing the ins and outs of different AI tools. But also, if you succeed, you have then freed up more time. It is a catch-22, but if you can at least get one thing, and maybe it's a small thing to start, maybe it's just saving an hour a month or an hour a week, that would still be pretty solid. And then it's up to you, and it's on you to then reallocate that to saying, well, then I'm going to do the next thing. The reallocation is just as important as saving the time, though.
Yeah, where are you going to put that new time, right?
Right. If you're just doing more of the same other stuff, which I get, we all have that pressure, you're just going to be in the same cycle over and over. But you do have to get over this hump where it's like, get the first win, get the first couple wins under your belt, free up a little time, protect that time, and then reallocate that time to the next AI focused.
Right. It's going to stay a slog, or you're going to start to turn that into momentum.
Right.
Absolutely. Exactly. Okay. So last question here, really. Let's say you are a marketing leader. Sales and marketing leader at a mid-sized industrial company, and you're watching your team use AI. Some of them are doing great stuff, but they're in silos. And you're thinking, I've got to get a handle on this now, right? What are the first 3 things you're going to do?
So number one, I'm going to actually take the time to step back and actually audit how it's being used, because there's so many issues when there are people in silos. I can tell you again, silos are like the core character in the horror stories that I can tell you, which is like, you may go say, I am super excited to take my next steps with AI. Let me go get some tools. Let me go get some training. Let me go do X, Y, and Z. Only to find months later, someone has already done all that in a different department, or someone has already paid for a different thing. Confirm what every team is using AI for at a high level, what tools and licenses they have access and approval for today, and also can you or how can you get involved in those tools and licenses? So you can find more about this online as well, or look at, courses in our AI Academy, but it's a super useful exercise. We walk people through literally building a workbook that is prioritized by value to solve something with AI and the ability to solve it with AI. Literally hundreds of use cases. We literally walk you through how to unbundle your job and your team's jobs into all the constituent work you're doing. We use some AI tools to help you do that. But even if you do it all manually, get a list of the work you are working on, get it prioritized, and then I want you to pick one thing. Step 3 is pick one thing, and with whatever AI tools your audit has surfaced that you have access to, or heck, pick one thing that is totally safe and not sensitive, and spend $20 on your own ChatGPT account for a month and take the month and figure that one thing out using AI. Figure out how to eliminate it, figure out how to augment it, figure out how to save time on it. There's a million other things, unfortunately, you do have to eventually worry about, but that is the first step. Like, if you have not gotten that momentum yet, absolutely critical to roll that boulder up and over the hump so you can get a little downhill motion, I would say.
And all of those tools, as I mentioned, are available on the SmarterX AI Academy. Highly recommended. So in the next part of our conversation, we're going to get into the actual executional layer here. So what a real AI-assisted content system is going to look like, and for the sales side, what maybe an honest prospecting workflow can do, and the tools that Mike might bet on for a lean B2B marketing machine. And that's coming up on the next episode of The Changeover. Thanks so much, Mike.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on the Changeover podcast. Remember to subscribe on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Wider.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. Let us know what you'd like to hear about next time by messaging Wider Group on social media. Thanks for watching.